Bonjour tout le monde. It's so great to be at AMO, and Jalen, thank you for that fantastic introduction. I want to begin by acknowledging my gratitude for the opportunity to be meeting on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory, and I want to reaffirm the Ontario Green Party's commitment to the truth and reconciliation process. I also want to give a big shout out to AMO for your reconciliation plan. And I want to congratulate and acknowledge the leadership of Mayor Robin Jones for your work in putting that plan together and your leadership as president of AMO. I also want to give a quick shout out to Women of Ontario Say No. I support your efforts to hold local officials accountable, and I will work with you to make sure we fix Bill 9 and get it across the finish line. Most of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for your leadership in our communities. You know, it's not easy right now. Tariffs, the housing affordability crisis, the heat waves and droughts and wildfires we've experienced. It's been a tough summer. And in the face of the economic uncertainty that we're facing from President Trump's attack on our sovereignty and our economy, I just want to say how important it is right now at this moment that we work across party lines and across jurisdictional lines to show strength and unity to push back against Trump's tariff threat. And that's exactly why I'm proud to say Ontario's Green Caucus voted in favor of the government's legislation to remove interprovincial trade barriers. And it's exactly why we expressed support last week for the release of $1 billion to support businesses and workers affected by the tariffs. But I also want to be crystal clear. We cannot use tariffs as an excuse to abandon the rules and regulations that protect the people and places we love in Ontario and the environment that protects us. We cannot abandon our constitutional obligation and duty to consult with First Nations with free, informed, and prior consent. And that is exactly why Ashlyn Clancy and I stand in solidarity with Indigenous leaders and with the over 30 municipalities who have passed resolutions opposing Bill 5. We will not build a prosperous economy in Ontario if we attack Indigenous rights, environmental protections, labor laws, and basic democratic oversight. I want to be clear. The Ontario Greens have a different vision for Ontario, one where we put people first with investments in emerging high-growth industries, creating good paying jobs for Ontarians, generating inclusive prosperity rooted in protecting the people and places we love in this province, where the province works in partnership with First Nations and municipalities to fund the programs and services that we need for our communities and our province to thrive. And that's exactly why the Greens renew our call for a new deal for municipalities, one that enables collaboration and consultation, respects local democracy, and limits provincial interference in local decision-making. Greens will continue to push for uploading community housing costs and covering 50% of transit operating costs as we review the fiscal framework for municipalities, Because we cannot continue to have a province that downloads costs onto your backs, forcing you to raise property taxes and to cut services. People in our communities deserve better. We will continue to fight for stable, predictable, multi-year funding streams for infrastructure for your communities, and to ensure that you have the funds necessary to make that infrastructure resilient to the increasing frequency and severity of climate-fueled unsafe weather. At the same time, we will work with you to ensure that the province is making the investments needed for people to thrive in our communities, ensuring that everyone has access to a family doctor or nurse practitioner or primary health care provider, providing the funding that our collapsing hospitals need to end hallway medicine and to end the closure of emergency departments, especially in rural communities. We will expand home and community care and push for person-centered nonprofit lawn care. We will push to reverse the cuts to per-student funding for our education system so we don't have overcrowded classrooms and so that people have the special education and mental health supports that our children deserve. And we will partner with municipalities to address the intersecting crisis of poverty, homelessness, mental health, and addictions. You know, sadly, Ontario's housing and homeless crisis is getting worse, not better. Whole generation of young people wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home. No city in Ontario where a minimum wage worker can afford average monthly rent. And an unprecedented 81,000 plus people experiencing homelessness in Ontario right now. And so when housing starts are at historic lows and housing prices are at historic highs, I say to the Premier, it is unacceptable for you to continue to say no to legalizing multiplexes and mid-rises across the province of Ontario. It's unacceptable to say no to the kind of protections for renters my colleague Ashlyn Clancy has put forward. It's unacceptable to continue to say no to providing government funding to build nonprofit, co-op, supportive, and social housing in this province. It's unacceptable that 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario was built before 1995. No wonder we have a housing crisis. So I'm going to continue to push for these solutions. And I'm also going to push for an Affordable Communities Fund so that you can lower development charges for starter homes built within existing urban neighborhoods so we can incentivize building of homes that people can afford in the communities they know and love without paving over our farmland and our nature, and do it in a way that ensures you have the finances you need to invest in housing infrastructure to unlock those housing starts. And why? Yeah, please. And why? Because our children deserve to have the dream of home ownership. And every single person in Ontario, every one of our neighbors deserves to have a safe, affordable place to call home each and every night. And I also want to be clear. We won't be able to make these investments if we don't have a strong economy. And so if there's one number that you take home today, that number is $2.2 trillion. That's the amount of global investment that is going into the green energy transition this year alone. Double what's going into fossil fuels. We could be using Ontario steel right now to attract that $2.2 trillion, to to build wind turbines, racking for solar panels, and battery storage facilities so we can become a global leader in the emerging new economy. But instead, Ontario is missing in action. The government's ramping up dirty, expensive gas plants. It's talking about feasibility studies for financially irresponsible projects like this ridiculous tunnel under the 401. Yeah, we could use that money for rural roads and bridges, eh? Yeah, I think all of you would agree with that. You know, we have to start making investments in where investors are making investments. And that's why it's so critically important to invest in the emerging new economy, because it makes absolutely no sense to turn our back to where the investment dollars are going. And at the same time, we can do it in a way that addresses the climate crisis. You know, it's been tough. 2 years ago, the forest fires cost our healthcare system $1.4 billion. The floods last summer in the GTA cost $1.3 billion an hour. The increasing severity and frequency of the kind of wildfires we're experiencing once again this summer, the drought that's affecting farmers in such a profound way this summer, doesn't have to be our future. Doesn't have to be, because we can build a strong, prosperous economy with good paying jobs, reducing people's energy costs in their monthly bills, and fighting climate change at the same time by making Ontario an energy superpower in the electrification economy that's emerging around the world. So I want to close by asking each and every one of you to join MPP Bobby Ann Brady and I in our efforts to protect farmland in Ontario by supporting Bill 21 to create a food belt for the province of Ontario. An example of how you can work across party lines, because we simply cannot afford to continue to lose 319 acres of farmland each and every day in this province, the equivalent of 9 family farms per week. That threatens our food security, our food sovereignty, and our $51 billion food and farming economy. So I just want to say to each and every one of you, by working together, we can build homes that people can afford, attract economic investment to fund public services, and protect the farmland that feeds us. If the province and municipalities work together on these solutions, and Greens are here to work with you and work for you. And I want to say thank you, merci, miigwech, and thank you for the great work that you do for our communities in Ontario. Thank you.